Hello world, Julio here, and in today's video, we will be building a responsive website with a hotel booking theme. This website is going to be based off of the Travelix template, which I'll link in the description below. Keep in mind that it's not going to look exactly the same because there's some things that I left out and some things that I added in. Before we move any further, let me just give you a brief overview. Here we have your standard navigation and hero section. Once we start scrolling, you see that the header is going to get smaller. Then we here have a form for the filters when you want to check in, the destination, and so on. Then here you have a featured hotel section. Then here you have a section for our special offer. And here you have images of the rooms available, prices, and so on. Here we have a contact section, and finally the footer. As mentioned, it's going to be fully responsive, so if we go into the responsive view, you'll see that everything is going to adapt as we make the viewport smaller. Then here at the top, we have the navigation for the mobile devices, and as you can see, that's also functional. This is going to be part 1 of the video, so make sure that you hit that subscribe button if you're new and turn on bell notifications so that you don't miss the next part. Now, let's jump right into the tutorial. Now, to get started, I'm going to be placing a link in the description below to a GitHub repo where you can find the files that you see here. Keep in mind that they're going to be empty. They're only starter files for those who want to follow along. There, you're going to have this index page, the styles.css, and the main.js, as well as the folder with all the images that you see right here. So be sure you go get those files so that now we can begin. So let me just minimize this so that I can have some room to work with, and then I'm going to open up my project in the browser so that I can have both windows side by side. Now, the first step is going to be going inside of the body. In here, I'm going to open up the header tag, and I'm also going to add the class of header. Inside of it, I want to have a div with the class of container, which is going to control the overall width of the content inside of it. Then I'm going to be using the nav tag, and I'm also going to apply the class of nav. In here, I'm going to have the rest of the information for the nav, which is going to be the logo, the nav items, and the icons. So the first step is going to be an anchor tag with the class of logo. This can just point back to the index.html, and inside of it, we will have an image. Then we want to access the image, so we are basically going to reference the current directory we're in, which is this Travelix folder right here, and then we're going to look for the images folder, and then the one that we want is the logo.png. And as you can see right here, it already shows up. We can't see the text at all because it's blending in with the background. Then underneath of the anchor tag, what we want is a div with the class of hamburger menu. And in here, we will have two font awesome icons. One is going to be for the bars, and the other one will be for the X. So to get started with that, we will apply the following font awesome classes. The first one is going to be FAS, and the second one is going to be FA Farce. Then the second class is going to be FAS, and then FA Times. And now we get the on and off toggle buttons. Underneath, we will open up a UL with the class of nav list. In here, we will have an LI with the class of nav item. And then inside of it, we will have an anchor tag with the class of nav link. This is not going to point anywhere, so for the time being, let's just actually copy the LI since we will have 4 more of those. And actually, since the first one is going to be for home, we can just actually point it back to the index.html. Then this will say home. The second one is going to say about. Then this one is going to say offers. This one will say news. And this one will say contact. And this is going to be it for the header and navigation. What we will do now is go inside of the CSS so that we can style this section by section. This way, it's easier for you to digest. So join me now inside of the CSS. So once you go inside of the CSS file, you're going to notice that there's already some stuff in it. Let me explain what that means. Here, we are importing the Google fonts of Open Sans and Courgette. Then, the following lines, we have a basic reset that selects everything, including the before and after pseudo elements, and then we just reset the margin to 0, the padding to 0, and then we set the box sizing to border box, which just makes doing everything later on easier when it comes to the margins and paddings. Then here we have some custom properties or variables. I'm setting up a dark color, as you can see, and the rest are pretty self-explanatory. Then here I have a linear gradient and an alternative gradient, which is flipped. So in here, I'm saying that the direction is going to be to right, and then I'm using the yellow variable color and the purple one, and then this one will be for a hover effect where I'm going to reverse the gradient on hover. So that being said, let's go underneath, and then what we want to do is basically apply some global styles. So let's create a comment for that. Then what I'll do here is select the HTML document. And what I want to do here is set a root font size of 10 pixels. And the reason I do that is because it makes the math a lot easier when we work with frame units, which is what we will be using in this tutorial. Then I'm going to select the body. And in here, I'm going to apply the font family. And this one is going to be of Open Sans. And then I'm going to basically say that the sans serif font is going to be a fallback just in case this one is not available. Then I'm going to apply a font size of 1.6 rem to the entire body. What I'll do next is set the font color to be of the dark color. And then for that, we can just refer to the variable, and then we say dark color. Underneath of the body, we also want to select all of our anchor tags, and then I'm going to set the text decoration to none. Then I'm going to say that they will inherit the color of its parent. In this case, it's going to take up the color of the parent, whichever that may be, but in this particular situation, it's going to be inheriting this color right here. What I'm going to do next is select all of the ULs, and I'll say that they'll have a list style set to none. And finally, I'm going to select every single section within the site. For now, we haven't used this tag, but we will later on for each individual section. So what I'm going to do is just create some spacing on the top and bottom, which is going to be 5 rem, and then 0 left and right. Keep in mind that this is going to be a mobile-first approach. What I'm going to do now is style the header. So let's create a comment for that. Header, and then styles. And should be like this. And here, what I will do is select the header. And the first thing I'm going to do is specify a width and a height. So the width is going to be 100%. The height is going to be 6 rem. Then what I'll do is give it a display of flex. And then I want to align all my items to the center. I'm also going to give it a position of fixed. So what I'll do here is say position fixed, and then I want to make sure that it starts at the top and then 0 at the left. The next thing I'm going to do is basically make the background color transparent. So for that, we will use the purple transparent color. So again, we'll reference that. Underneath it, what I want to do is set a C index of a high number because I want it to stay on top of all the content in the website. So I'll do 999 in this situation. For the time being, it doesn't look that great, but it's going to start taking shape once we style this UL we have right here. So the next step is going to be actually targeting the container. And technically the container is going to be a global style since we will be reusing it over and over. So I guess we could, or actually what we can do is just say reusable. We can just create a section for reusable content or styles. So in here, what we will do is actually target the container. And what I'll do is set a width of 100%. Then I'm going to set a max width because I want to limit how big it gets. And this is going to be 120 rem. The next thing that I want to do here is give it some padding on the left and right. So I'm going to use the shorthand, 0 top and bottom, and then 1.5 left and right. Finally, I want to center this container in the middle, so I'm going to use a margin for that. And it's going to be 0 top and bottom, and then auto left and right. And this is going to be it for the container. Now we can continue styling the rest of the header. The first step will be, actually let's create a comment to create some more separation here. So let's say header nav styles, or we can just say actually styles dash nav. Under here, I'm going to target the nav. And this also is going to be a flexed container. So I'm going to give it a display of flex. I also want to align my items in the middle. So I'm going to say align items center. And then I want to justify the content space between because I want them all to be separated evenly. So justify content space between. Again, it's not going to be showing up right until we fix this UL right here. But for the time being, we get the desired effect. Then what I'll do is target the logo image. So I'm going to say logo, and then the image inside of it. And actually, should be this. So what I want to do with the image here is say that I want the max width to be not 100%, but 80% just so that it's a bit smaller, just like so. Then I'm going to target the hamburger menu div. And in here, I want to apply some general styles for the icons, and that's going to be a font size of something like 2.6 rem. Then what I'll do is say that the color is going to be white. The next thing is I want to make it so that when we hover over it, it looks as if it was clickable. So for that, we can use a cursor of pointer. Then I'm going to also set a position of relative. And the reason for that is because I want to use a C index here. And I'll do something like 1500. Again, the reason for that is because later on this is going to be positioned absolute. So I also want to be able to manipulate this hamburger menu div so that it shows up on top of this nav that we have right here, the UL. So that's what this C index and the position relative are doing. Underneath it, I now want to target these individual icons. The reason for that is so that we can actually hide them and show them when we want. So the first one is going to be the hamburger menu. And then I want to target the icon with the X. So that's going to be FA times. And I want to say that it's going to have a display of none. Because initially, we only want to see the bars right here. What we want to do next is actually style the nav list we have right here. So that's going to be pretty simple as well. So we say nav list. This will also be a flex container, so display a flex. And what I want to do now is say that I want to give it a position, or actually, I'm going to do all this to group them together so on top, so I'll do a position of fixed as well. then the left is going to be 0 as well. And what I want to do next is set the width to 100%. I want the height to be 100 of the BH so that it takes up all the available space. And now I want to set a background color. For that, we can reference back to the purple. And this one is going to be the solid. So now that we have that, what we can do is say that the flex direction is going to be of a column. Then I want to align them, even though it's barely visible right here, because we still have to sort out the colors. What I want to do here is say that the align items is going to be the center, and then justify content will be center as well. Here, I also want to set a C index. In this case, I'll do it 1400. This way, it's still greater than the header itself, and then, but it's not going to be greater than this icon right here. This way, it still shows up on top of it. What I want to do now is go underneath it, and I'm going to style these links right here. So for that, we want to select the nav link. And what I want to do here is give him a display of block. And this one is going, what this does is that it's going to allow us to use paddings top and bottom, as well as margins top and bottom, because by default they're inline elements, which means that you can't use a margin top and bottom or padding top and bottom. Then what I'll do here is give it a color of white. I'm going to increase the font size to 3 rem. Then I'm going to say that the font weight will be bold, and the text transform is going to be of uppercase. I'm also going to apply some letter spacing of something like 2 pixels. Should be letter spacing. And what I want to do now is say that the padding all around is going to be 1 rem. This way, we just have a bigger clickable area. And as you can see now, they're touching, but the reason for that is because we still have to add some separation. So for that, let's actually target the nav item. Since it comes before the nav link, let's actually do it over here. So nav item. And actually what I want to do here is target every single nav item except for the last one. So for that, we can use the not and then last child. So again, it's going to apply a margin to every single anchor tag or nav item we have right here, except for this last one. So the margin is going to be very small, and it's going to be a margin bottom. And I'm going to do 0.5 rem. So now we get the separation between them, just like so, right here. And that's all there is to do for the navigation. What we have to do now is actually make it functional. So how can we do that? Well, first we have to hide this nav list we have right here, and then we have to toggle it on and off when we click on this button. So let's do that right now. Let's scroll up back to the styles for the nav list, and what we want to do is actually also add here an opacity of 0. But notice there's an issue. You see that if I go right here, I'm still hovering over something, but that's because we're only basically hiding its visibility. It's still technically there. So what we also have to do is set a transform of scale X, or actually not scale X, but we can just do scale in general, and then we set it back to 0. And now the element is so small that it's gone altogether. What we have to do next is go underneath, and we have to create a class that we will apply through JavaScript that will apply certain styles to this nav list so that we can reveal it once we click on this button. So in this case, the class that we will create will be called menu open. And we will be applying it to the header actually. So we want to find the nav list inside of it. And here we basically want to set the opacity and the transform scale back to 1. So let's do that. And that's going to be it. what we have to do now is go inside of the JavaScript so that we can handle the click event on the hamburger menu. So let's go inside of the main.js file. And the first thing what we have to do here is define some variables. So for that, we'll just create a comment called selectors. Then we can say that this one will be header. And then we can say document query selector. Can't even spell today. And then this one will be the query selector as mentioned. And then I want to grab the hamburger menu. The next one that I want to grab is going to be the, not the hamburger menu. We want the header right here. Actually, let me just copy this. Let me paste it below because we still need the hamburger menu. So what we will do here for the second one is call it hamburger menu. And then for the header, we simply just delete this hamburger menu from here and say that it's the header that we want. So now that we have the variables, we have to create an event listener that it's going to be attached to the hamburger menu. So hamburger menu, add event listener, and then it's going to be of click. And then inside of this function, what we want to do is say that we want to grab the header, and then we want to look at the class list, and then we want to toggle the class of menu open. And let me actually just refresh this because usually I have to do it manually. So now if we click on this, it should work just like so. But it doesn't look all that great. Let's go ahead and add a transition. So let's go back to the styles. And then here inside of the nav list, we want to add a transition to the opacity. So transition, opacity, and then we'll do it over 0.5 seconds. Now when we click on it, you see that it's going to have a better animation. Now the only thing left that we have to do is sort out this issue with the hamburger menu. When we click it, we also want it to change to the X. So let's go back up to the styles for this hamburger menu. And what we want to say here is when the header has the class of menu open, so menu open. And then inside of it, we want to look for the hamburger menu and then the FA times. And then we want to give it a display of block so that we show it. So now when we click it, you see that it also shows up. The only issue now is that we have to hide this icon for the bars. So let's do that. Since it's going to be essentially the same, let's just grab this line that we already wrote, paste it down below, and then what we had to do is basically just change times to bars, which is going to be a reference for the bars icon. So now when we click it, actually let me just refresh that. It's because I have to change this rule to display none. So now when we click it, it should work just like so. And as you can see, we have now created and made the navigation functional. The next step is going to be going back to the index.html so that we can work on the header. So join me there.